Tonight, this is not just another trade story. This is not just another fight between neighbors. This is about power. This is about control. This is about the minerals that run America's future. And right now, a growing feud between the United States and Canada is shaking the very ground under President Donald Trump's mineral strategy. Here is what is happening. The Trump administration has taken a hard line on trade with Canada. Tariffs, threats, tough talk. The goal was simple: protect American jobs and force better trade deals. But now, that same aggressive strategy may be putting something much bigger at risk: critical minerals. These are not ordinary rocks pulled from the earth. These are the materials that power electric vehicles, fighter jets, smartphones, missiles, satellites, and advanced weapon systems. Lithium, cobalt, rare earth elements. Without them, factories slow down, defense systems stall, innovation stops. And here's the truth: many Americans are just now starting to understand. The United States depends heavily on allies to secure these minerals. And one of the most important allies is Canada. Canada is not just a neighbor. It is one of the largest, safest, and most reliable sources of critical minerals for the United States. The supply chains are deeply connected. Mines in Canada feed American factories. Canadian processing plants support U.S. manufacturing. Cooperation has been the backbone of this system. But tensions are rising. President Donald Trump's aggressive tariff approach has strained the relationship. Trade penalties and sharp rhetoric have caused friction between Washington and Ottawa. Canadian leaders, including Prime Minister Mark Carney, are pushing back. They are warning that trust is being damaged. And when trust weakens, cooperation weakens. This is where the real danger begins. Securing critical minerals is not just about economics. It is about national security. The Pentagon relies on stable mineral supplies for advanced weapon systems. American automakers rely on them for electric vehicles. And tech companies rely on them for chips and batteries. If cooperation with Canada breaks down, the United States could face supply delays, higher costs, and deeper dependence on other countries that may not share American interests. This is not a small ripple in the trade world. This is a possible crack in the foundation of America's industrial and defense strategy. The big question tonight is simple. Can a trade fight with one of America's closest allies undermine the very mineral strategy designed to make the United States stronger and more independent? Because what is unfolding right now is not just a political dispute. It is a strategic gamble. This story goes deeper than tariffs and headlines. It reaches into the heart of how America builds, defends, and powers itself. For years, leaders in Washington have warned about dependence on foreign minerals. The fear has been clear. Too much control sits in the hands of countries like China. Rare earth processing, battery materials, key components for advanced weapons. Much of it flows through Beijing's influence. That is why President Donald Trump made mineral independence a priority. The message was strong. America must secure its own supply chains. America must reduce risk. America must protect its industries. And on paper, Canada was the perfect partner. Stable government, shared border, deep military alliance, decades of trade under agreements like USMCA. Canadian mines produce nickel, cobalt, graphite, uranium, and other materials the U.S. desperately needs. Joint projects were expanding. Investment was flowing. Cooperation looked solid. But aggressive trade moves changed the tone. When tariffs hit Canadian goods, frustration grew in Ottawa. Officials began to question whether the United States could be trusted as a long-term partner. Prime Minister Mark Carney has signaled that Canada will defend its economic interests. That means retaliation is on the table. That means new trade barriers could rise. And this is where the mineral strategy starts to wobble. Supply chains are fragile. They depend on trust. They depend on steady agreements. Mining projects take years to develop. Processing plants require billions in investment. Companies do not commit money when political tension hangs in the air. If Canadian leaders decide to slow cooperation or shift mineral exports elsewhere, the impact would not be small. Europe is hungry for minerals. Asian markets are expanding. Global demand for batteries and defense materials is growing fast. Canada has options, and the United States may suddenly find itself competing, not partnering. This matters because building new mines inside America is not simple. Environmental reviews take years. Local opposition can delay projects. Infrastructure must be built. Processing facilities are limited. The United States cannot instantly replace Canadian supply. So while the trade dispute may look like a political chess match, the consequences move far beyond politics. Factories in Michigan, defense contractors in Texas, battery plants in Nevada, they all depend on stable mineral flow. Disruption means higher prices. Higher prices mean slower growth. Slower growth means lost jobs. The strategy meant to strengthen American independence could, in a painful twist, create new vulnerabilities. And that is the tension building tonight. A fight meant to show strength may be testing the very partnerships that keep America secure. Now here is where the stakes become crystal clear. This is not only about cars and phones. This is about fighter jets. It is about submarines. It is about missile systems. It is about the future of American defense. The United States military cannot function without critical minerals. Advanced radar systems rely on rare earth elements. Precision-guided weapons need specialized metals. Nuclear submarines require uranium. Satellites depend on complex mineral components. Every piece of modern defense technology starts deep in the ground. For years, American defense leaders have warned about supply chain weakness. They have said it openly. If mineral access is cut off, production slows. If production slows, readiness suffers. And in a world filled with rising tensions, readiness cannot afford delays. That is why cooperation with Canada has been seen as a strategic asset, not just a trade relationship. The two countries share intelligence. They share air defense through NORAD. They train together. They fight side by side. Their defense industries are deeply connected. Mineral supply has been part of that trusted system. But trust is fragile. When tariffs are imposed, when harsh words dominate the headlines, business leaders grow cautious. Investors hesitate. Mining partnerships stall. Joint ventures become uncertain. And uncertainty is poison for long-term strategy. Prime Minister Mark Carney faces pressure at home. Canadian workers do not want to feel punished by American trade moves. Canadian companies do not want to carry extra costs. Political leaders in Ottawa must show strength just as leaders in Washington do. That creates a dangerous cycle. One side imposes tariffs, the other side responds. Retaliation follows. Markets react, and slowly, cooperation weakens. If Canada chooses to redirect mineral exports or prioritize other partners, the United States would have to scramble. Alternative sources may be farther away. They may be less stable. They may come with political strings attached. And here is the deeper concern. If American policy strains relationships with close allies, it could push those allies toward new trade blocs and new strategic partnerships. That reshapes global power. It shifts influence. It changes who controls the resources that shape the next generation of technology. President Donald Trump's goal has been to put America first, to reduce reliance on rivals, to strengthen domestic industry. But critics now ask a serious question. Can a hard trade line against Canada unintentionally weaken the very supply chain shield America is trying to build? Because minerals are not just commodities. They are leverage. They are power. And right now, that power is caught in the middle of a growing feud. There is another layer to this story that cannot be ignored. Time. Mineral strategy is not something that changes in a month. Mines take 5, 10, sometimes 15 years to fully develop. Processing plants take massive capital. Skilled workers must be trained. Roads, rail lines, energy grids, all of it must be built before a single battery metal reaches a factory floor. This is a long game. And right now, the United States is trying to play catch-up. For decades, America allowed other nations to dominate mineral processing. China moved fast. It invested heavily. It locked in supply deals across Africa, Asia, and South America. Washington now understands the delay was costly. President Donald Trump has pushed for faster domestic mining approvals. He has spoken about cutting red tape. He has argued that America must dig and refine its own resources. But even with faster permits, domestic output cannot replace Canadian supply overnight. That is the reality. Canada already has operating mines. It already has infrastructure. It already shares a border with the United States, which keeps transportation simple and secure. Trucks cross daily. Rail shipments move smoothly. Costs remain predictable. Disrupt that relationship, and the clock starts ticking. Every delay in mineral shipments can ripple outward. Car plants may slow production. Battery factories may adjust output. Defense contractors may rethink timelines. Investors may shift capital to safer markets. And markets react fast. When traders sense political tension, prices move. Nickel prices can spike. Lithium contracts can tighten. Companies rush to secure alternative deals. That volatility makes long-term planning harder for American industry. Prime Minister Mark Carney understands that Canada holds leverage. Mineral wealth gives Ottawa influence. If trade tensions continue, Canada could demand stronger terms. It could insist on new agreements. It could slow cooperation to gain negotiating power. This is not emotional politics. This is strategic calculation. And in Washington, the debate grows sharper. Supporters of President Donald Trump argue that tough tactics are necessary. They say short-term tension is worth long-term strength. They believe pressure forces better deals. Critics warn that allies should not be treated like rivals. They say mineral security depends on partnership, not punishment. So tonight, the United States faces a balancing act. Show strength without breaking trust. Protect industry without isolating allies. Secure minerals without pushing them farther away. Because once supply chains shift, they rarely return the same way. And the future of American industry may depend on how this moment is handled. Now consider the economic shockwave this could send through everyday American life. When people hear the words critical minerals, it can sound distant. It can feel technical, but the impact is personal. Think about the car in the driveway. Electric vehicles rely on lithium, nickel, cobalt, and graphite. If mineral supplies tighten, battery costs rise. When battery costs rise, car prices climb. Families pay more. Think about home electronics, smartphones, laptops, smart appliances. All depend on rare earth elements and specialized metals. Supply disruption does not just affect factories. It reaches into living rooms. And then there is energy. The United States is racing toward cleaner energy systems. Solar panels, wind turbines, grid-scale batteries. Every one of those technologies depends on mineral inputs. If cooperation with Canada weakens, clean energy projects could slow down. Costs could increase. Timelines could stretch. Businesses notice this risk immediately. Major manufacturers build plans years in advance. They sign supply contracts. They invest billions based on stable assumptions. When trade tension rises between the United States and Canada, those assumptions become uncertain. Uncertainty leads to hesitation. Hesitation leads to slower hiring, delayed expansion, and cautious spending. President Donald Trump has consistently argued that tariffs protect American workers. The message is clear. Stand firm. Defend national interests. Push back against what he calls unfair trade practices. But Canada is not a distant rival. It is America's largest trading partner. Supply chains run across the border in both directions. American companies operate mines in Canada. Canadian firms invest in U.S. factories. Prime Minister Mark Carney must answer to Canadian voters who expect strength. If Canadian industries feel squeezed, Ottawa may retaliate in ways that touch American agriculture, manufacturing, or energy exports. Trade fights rarely stay contained. They expand, and once they expand, political pressure rises on both sides of the border. Leaders harden positions. Compromise becomes harder. Markets grow more nervous. This is why analysts say the feud threatens more than mineral contracts. It threatens confidence. Confidence is the foundation of investment. It is the engine of growth. When confidence drops, economies feel it quickly. So the question becomes sharper tonight. Is this strategy building American resilience, or is it testing the limits of a partnership that underpins industrial strength? Because what looks like leverage today could become liability tomorrow. And that risk is no longer theoretical. There is also a global audience watching every move. China's watching. Europe is watching. Emerging markets hungry for resources are watching. When two close allies clash over trade, competitors take notes. They look for openings. They look for weakness. They look for ways to step in. China already dominates much of the world's rare earth processing. It has spent years securing mineral rights across continents. If friction grows between Washington and Ottawa, Beijing could quietly strengthen its ties with Canada or other Ottawa, mineral-rich nations that would shift leverage. European nations are also racing to secure stable mineral supplies. Germany, France, and others need battery materials for their auto industries. If Canada senses instability in its relationship with the United States, it could diversify exports. It could lock in long-term deals elsewhere. Global demand for these materials is exploding. The clean energy transition is accelerating. Defense spending is rising in many countries. Competition for supply is fierce. In that environment, trust is currency. President Donald Trump's supporters argue that strength earns respect. They believe firm trade policies show resolve. They argue that America cannot afford to appear weak. Critics counter that alienating close partners plays into the hands of strategic rivals. They warn that once alternative supply routes are built, they may not shift back easily. And here is the hard truth. Mineral supply chains are not flexible overnight. They are built through contracts, infrastructure, and political alignment. If Canada signs major deals with other blocs during a period of tension, those agreements could last decades. That means the impact of today's dispute could echo far into the future. Prime Minister Mark Carney understands Canada's position in the global market. He knows the country's mineral wealth is a powerful bargaining tool. Canada is not desperate for buyers. Demand is high worldwide. So Washington must weigh every move carefully. Because in geopolitics, perception matters. If allies feel uncertain, they hedge. If they hedge, influence spreads. If influence spreads, America's ability to shape supply chains shrinks. This feud is no longer a simple tariff dispute. It has become a test of alliance management in a world where resources equal power. And the outcome may define who controls the building blocks of the next generation of technology and defense. And now it all comes down to one defining question. What kind of strength does America want to show? Strength through pressure or strength through partnership? President Donald Trump built his trade strategy on the belief that hard bargaining wins results. Tariffs were designed to force change, to reset relationships, to protect American workers and industries. There is no doubt that many Americans support that approach. They want fairness. They want toughness. They want leaders who fight. But mineral security is not a short-term negotiation. It is a long-term mission. The United States and Canada share the longest undefended border in the world. They share defense systems. They share intelligence. Their economies are deeply intertwined. When it comes to critical minerals, they share something even more important: dependence. American factories depend on Canadian supply. Canadian mines depend on American buyers. The system works because both sides trust that cooperation will continue. If that trust weakens too far, rebuilding it will not be simple. Markets may adjust. Companies may relocate. Governments may redraw supply routes. New alliances may take shape. And once that shift happens, it cannot easily be reversed. Prime Minister Mark Carney faces his own political pressures. President Donald Trump faces his. Both must show resolve. Both must protect national interests. But history shows that when allies clash too hard, others benefit. The world is entering an era defined by competition for resources. The countries that secure a stable mineral supply will shape the future of technology, energy, and defense. That is the reality. So tonight, this feud is more than political theater. It is a crossroads. Will the United States and Canada find a way to stabilize tensions and protect a strategic partnership? Or will a battle over tariffs reshape the very supply chains meant to guarantee American independence? The answer will not just affect trade balances. It will affect factory floors. It will affect military readiness. It will affect the price families pay for the technologies of tomorrow. This is not a minor disagreement between neighbors. This is a high-stakes test of strategy, alliance, and power. And the outcome could define America's industrial future for decades to come.